Welcome to this video. So in this video we are going to go step by step in creating a web application like this that can read multiple PDF files and can answer any question from within those PDF files, right? We're going to go over the front end, we are going to go over the back end code. We're going to create this from scratch step by step, and let me show this working to you. If I enter my API key over here, browse some files, let's just say these two, and I ask it a question. Let's just say, what is linear regression, which is a question from math from machine learning. This information is present within this PDF file. uh, it's going to take some time to find the answer from within this file, and it's going to return us with an answer. Okay, there we go. So linear regression is a method for finding a linear function and all of that. So it did provide us with an answer. We're going to create this from scratch step by step. Let's get into it. Alright, so before we start writing the code, I actually want to show you the layout of our web application. So our web application is going to have a front end and a back end. Now the front end is the UI or layout which the user actually sees, right? And he's able to interact with it. So he'll obviously have an option to add his API key, OpenAI API key over here. He can upload one or multiple PDF files here, and then he can ask questions from within those PDF files, right? So that'll be the front end that the user interacts with. Now, once the user puts in a question and sends the request, we actually want to create a computational process that runs in the backend. When I say it runs in the backend, it means that the user is not going to be able to see this, right? It runs in the background. But this computational process is actually the main functional code, which is responsible for training the AI on the PDFs and embedding that. Uh, and storing that within a vector database, and then finding the answer from within those PDF files against the user question. And once it finds an answer, it will return that to the front end, and will display that on the front end, so that way the user is able to see that the response on the front end, right? So that's how we're going to structure this web application. We are going to create two files, front end and the back end. We're going to start coding with the front end, and once we have a basic style and theme of the front end ready, then we are going to code the main computational process in the back end, and lastly we are going to link both of these together. So let me actually close this and move to my IDE. All right, so I've opened up Visual Studio Code, and I have created a new directory over here, and I'm going to create my first file, which will be the frontend.py. Inside of here, we are going to create the front end. Now to create the front end, I am going to be using Streamlit library. I'm going to import this as st. Now Streamlit is a Python library that allows you to create web applications pretty easily. Very simple web applications, and it's very easy to create. So let me give you an example with, let's just say, st.title, and I can put in the title multiple PDF Q&A, and let me just add a text which says, hey, this is an example text, right? Now, how we run the Streamlit application is we open up the terminal, and inside of here we write Streamlit run, and then the .py file name, which in our case is frontend.py, right? and there we go, we have our local host, and inside of there we have the layout that we just wrote in the code. Now suppose if I am to add another object inside of the code, let's just say for in taking the input of the user, let me write st dot text input, right? Enter your input here, right? I'm going to save this, go back to the page, refresh that, and there we go. Now the user can enter input, right, and press enter, and it will be saved inside of the web application. So Streamlit makes it really easy to create these simple web application interfaces. So I'm gonna go back, remove this. I'm actually going to close this as well with Control C. Clear this out, close this, and we are going to define our front end function here. So I'm going to define, I'm going to name the function front end. Inside of this function, we are going to be creating our Streamlit UI, right? I am also going to put if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals underscore underscore main semicolon. If this is true, then I am going to call my front end function. Right, with that, we are ready to code our front end of our web application. So let me just start off with some really basic things. We can give it a title, right? Title can be chat with multiple PDF files. Put F with capital, right? We can, let's just say, create an object to take user question. So we can say st dot text input, and we can say ask question below, right? And if we go to the terminal and run this, streamlit run front end dot py, there we go, we have our main layout over here. We can actually add a couple more things over here. Let me first of all start with setting some configurations of the page. So st dot set page configuration. You can see over here we have the option to add layout and the option to, and there's some other parameters here as well. We can give page title and page icon. We can put an emoji over here, layout, wide or centered. So let me first of all give it a title. Page title equals chat with multiple PDF files, right? And we can give it a layout. For now, I am going to keep it centered. Now, if I save this, go back and reload this. Right now, you can see it's front end Streamlit, but if I reload this, we have our page title, chat with multiple PDF files, right? And layout is centered. Now, just to show you, if I change the layout option to wide, save this, go back, it is actually going to stretch over the whole area of the screen, right? So we have the layout, we have this title and input text. um, Here we want to do one more thing, which is once the user enters a question, let's just say he says, what is this PDF about, right? We actually want to store this question, so that way when we need to feed this question later to AI or ChatGPT, we need to fetch this question. So we need to be storing this somewhere. So in order to do that, let me create a variable called question, and we're going to be storing this. Just to show you, once again, once the user enters the question, and he presses enter, we are saving that in question. And let me show you that with an example. If I do xt.text and write a question, save this, go back, reload this. Now, when the user enters a question and he presses enter, we are showing that over here with st.text question. Let me actually move this to the left hand side, this to the right hand side, so that we are able to see. So what we're doing right here is that we are taking the user question, storing that inside of a variable, and then we are displaying that with st.text question. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to add a sidebar to the left hand side of this application. What I'm going to do for that is simply I'm going to do st.sidebar. Right now, if we want to add multiple elements to the sidebar, let's just say an option to add OpenAI key, option to upload uh, PDF files, or maybe an image as well. In that case, we actually need to do with st.sidebar semi and this colon over here, and then we can put multiple things, and all of those will appear in the sidebar. Let me give you an example. If I do subheader and I call that enter your API op- OpenAI API key, right? And let's just say I provide an option to enter the API key, which will be once again text input, right? Enter API key. Now if I reload this over here, you'll be able to see we now have a sidebar. If I make this a little bit bigger, you'll be able to see like this, right? Now, if we want to add an image on top of this sidebar just so it looks a little bit good, we can do that. I actually have created an image on Canva. Right here, it's 400 by 200 pixels. I am going to download this in PNG. I am going to, let me just make this smaller, and I'm going to open this in Finder, and let me rename this to pdf.png and move this to our directory. Now we can do st.image and write the name of the image, save this, and this should appear in our Streamlit application now. There we go. Okay. Also, just like the question, once the user was putting in the question, we were storing that inside of a variable. We need to do that and the same with the API key, because we're going to be needing the API key to make requests to ChatGPT. So we are actually going to do that as well with API key. We are going to store that inside of API key, right? And just to show you an example once again, if I write st.text API key, right, it's going to show the API key once the user puts the API key. So reload this. Let me just write a random key. There we go. So we now have the API key stored inside of this variable, and we have the ability to call that whenever needed. Um, Another change we are going to make over here is um, with this API key, what we want to do is when the user enters the API key, we actually do not want other people to see this. So we want this to be secret. For that, we have option inside of the text input. If we can see, we have some parameters for that. So we have placeholder. We can add a placeholder, which will do, and then type. So we can put in a parameter called type, which can be password or default. So let me show you over here. Type. If we set this to password and reload this, now you can see that it's actually showing up as password. So it's like showing up these secret letters which the other person is not able to see, right? And the other thing which we saw was placeholder. Placeholder, I am going to say enter OpenAI key, right? If I reload this, you can see we now have a placeholder here as well. Unnecessary, but just a feature in case you want to use it. Okay. We can also do some stylization. For example, if we want to change the color of any text over here, let's just say I want to change the color of PDF files. The way to do that is you put in a colon, you write the name of the color, and you put inside of brackets whatever you want to color, inside of square brackets. So if I do this and save this, reload this, you can see that we have PDF files in red this time around. Now here we also want to add an option to upload PDF files, which we are going to do with st.file uploader, right? And let's see what arguments we can give over here. We can give the type of the files that a user can upload. We can obviously give that as PDF. We can also give it a label. Let's just say upload PDF files, right? And let's see what other arguments we can give it. Um, Another important one is accept multiple files. So we need to set that true. Accept multiple files equals true, because obviously we want the user to upload multiple PDF files as well if they want to, not just one. That's literally the name of the application. So let's see if there is any other that we can use. I think this is good for now. Okay, once the user, let's reload this. You can see that we now have an option to add PDF files as well. We can browse files, select a PDF, and it'll show up over here, right? We actually want to store this PDF as well, because later on we are going to use AI to train on this and to create embeddings from within these PDF files. So let's just store this inside of a variable as well. I am going to call this PDFs and store this, right? And let's see the type of PDFs when it appears. I am going to, once the user, let's just say the user uploads 2 PDFs. In that case, we want to see how these appear. So I am going to write st.text PDFs and st.text, and then I'm gonna do type of PDFs. Okay, and let me actually put the type above this. First of all, we check the type of the PDF file and then the PDFs. Let me reload this. Right now there's nothing, so it's telling us that PDFs is actually a list, and right now it's empty, you can see. But if I, let's just say, add 2 PDFs over here, you can see that we now have 2 PDFs inside of our list. uh, this is comma, and this is the second one. This is the first one, and this is the second one. Okay, and this is a class list. All right, so now we are storing the PDFs. So once the user, let's just say user uploads 5 PDFs, those 5 PDFs will be uploaded inside of this list. okay, inside of a list. So right here, I think we have the main functionality of the front end ready. Now we are going to work on the back end code a little bit, and once that is ready, we can integrate that with this code. I am just going to remove this from here because this is unnecessary. We're just repeating that too many times. And I'm actually going to put one over here, st.subheader, upload PDFs here, right, reload this. So, and we can also put a button over here, let's just say st.button, which says process, right, just to process the PDF files. Reload this. Now, just to show you, this is the final layout of our application, right? The user can enter their API key over here. They can upload multiple PDF files, right? And then they can ask a question: what are these PDF files about, right? But right now, when they press enter, obviously nothing happens because we have not created the functionality that searches from within the PDF and provides an answer. So we're going to do that now. Let's move towards that. Inside of our main project directory, we are going to create the second file, which will be the backend.py. Right inside of here, we are going to code the backend of our application. Now, in order to code the backend, we are actually going to import quite a few things. We are first of all going to import OS, and then from Langchain. Uh, in order to create the functionality of the backend, we are going to be using the Langchain library, which is quite a famous library, and it allows us to do quite a lot of things with OpenAI and ChatGPT. In our case, we want to use its document loaders, and we want to use its methods that are for PDF files. So from Langchain document loaders, we are going to import quite a few things: unstructured PDF loader, right? And then from Langchain dot text splitter, import recursive character text splitter. From Langchain dot vector stores, import chroma. This is the vector database that we are going to use to embed the PDF information. Then we are going to do from Langchain dot embeddings, import OpenAI embeddings. We're going to be using OpenAI to embed create embeddings. And then we are going to do from Langchain dot LLMs, large language models. We want to import OpenAI as our language model. Then from Langchain dot chains dot question answering, we are going to import load QA chain. Okay. We also need to import PyPDF. From PyPDF2, we are going to be importing PDF reader. Okay, with that, we are ready to start coding the backend of our web application. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I am going to define a function, and let's just say I am going to name this computational process, right? And here we actually need to define what parameters this computational process is going to take, right? We know for one thing that it's going to take PDF files, right? And it's going to train the AI on those PDF files, roughly speaking. And then we need the question that the user inputs, so that way it can find the answer from within those PDF files against this question. And lastly, we are also going to be needing our API key, right? Because API key is needed to make requests to OpenAI or ChatGPT. So these are the three parameters that our function will need. Uh, let's start writing our main function. First of all, we're going to initialize our language model. I am going to do os.environment OpenAI API key equals API key, right? We need the API key for OpenAI, and then we are going to initialize our language model, which will be OpenAI. Remember, we imported this over here from Langchain.large language models import OpenAI, and we are going to set temperature equals 0. This is basically the randomness in the answer, so it does not give the same answer each time. And then OpenAI API key equals API key, right? Once again, the parameter that we will set, we will provide one when we are calling this function. And after this, now we actually need to set up a process that takes in the PDFs and retrieves the information from within the PDFs. So let's just say I have a PDF over here that I imported. Let me just browse file. Let's just say I imported this PDF, Math for Machine Learning book preview. We need to have a process that reads all of the pages of this PDF and retrieves the text from within that. So that way we can, you know, save that text and train the API. Roughly speaking, it does not exactly happen like that, but train our language model on this, so that way it knows what text is inside of the PDF file. So for that, let's say we create a string called text, and we are going to iterate over the PDF files. So in this case, we had two PDF files that the user uploaded. So we are going to create a for loop that iterates over these PDF files. So I can do for file inside for file in PDFs, right? PDFs is the variable that we created in our front end. Remember, that has the PDFs uploaded. So suppose the user uploaded two PDFs, then this PDF will have two files inside of this. This will be a list that contains two files. So for file in PDF, that means for each file inside of the PDF, it's first of all going to iterate over the first file and then the second file inside of the PDFs, right? We are going to do PDF reader. We actually want PyPDF to read this PDFs. So I'm going to do PDF reader. We are going to provide it with the file. In the first loop, it's going to read the first file. In the second loop, it's going to read the second file, right? Once it reads the file, we want to iterate over each page inside of this file. We're going to run a for loop once again for page in PDF reader dot pages, right? We are going to do text plus we're going to add this text to this string, empty string that we created, right? Page dot extract text, and we're going to do this bracket. So what this actually does is, for first file, it first of all reads that file and gets all of its pages. Then from it uh, each page inside of that first file, it gets their pages. It extracts the text from those pages, and then it adds that text to this text, and it's going to do the same for the second PDF file as well. So it doesn't matter how many PDF files you upload. Even if you upload like 5, it's going to run that loop 5 times, and each time it's going to add the text inside of this same string over here, right? Now that we have the text of all of the PDFs inside of our text string, we want to split that text into chunks. And the reason for that is because OpenAI has a limit. We cannot feed it a very large amount of file at the same time to process. So we're going to split that into smaller chunks. So what we can do is we can define a text splitter, and it will be able to recursive character text splitter, which we imported over here, right? So we're going to use this method. Chunk size, you can define, in my case I'm just gonna do it 1000, and after that you can do chunk overlap is equal to 0. This simply means how much overlap is there between adjacent paragraphs, right? Now just to give you an example, if I load up a PDF file over here, let's just say documents, PDF files, not this one. We actually want to go to files and sample.pdf. So it just this thing over here, what we define the chunk overlap is basically how much overlap is between adjacent file. So suppose adjacent one chunk was this much, the next chunk will start from here, right? But if we have some overlap, let's just say overlap of 2, then the next chunk will start from here. So 2 of these will be common. So that's basically the chunk overlap, which we are putting 0 over here. And now we are going to use this text splitter to split the text into chunks. So we are going to do chunks. Let's just say chunks equals this text splitter dot, we're going to use the split text method, and we are going to provide text as its argument. Text equal text, right? Or you can simply write text as well inside of here. Now once we have these chunks, we need to create vector embeddings of these chunks, so that way we can store it inside of a vector database. So let me say embeddings equals open AI embeddings, and we're gonna just provide some parameters that are necessary for this. So open AI API key equals obviously API key, right? And then we are going to use the doc search. um, Once we have created the embeddings, we need to have a method that can search from those embeddings against a certain given. So for that, we are going to create a method called doc search equals chroma, and this is the vector database that we are using, dot uh, from text, right? And we are going to provide it with chunks, right? The chunks that we created, and embeddings equals embeddings. Uh, this variable we defined over here, and as dot as retriever. There we go, right? And after this, we are going to, all right, now we have defined the embeddings and stored them inside of Chroma vector data store. Now we actually need to get user question and find an answer relevant to that question. For that, we are going to do, first of all, we are going to define if question. This means that user question exists, and this will ensure that the user question field is not empty. So if this is empty, then it's not going to search the vector database. It's going to only search the vector database if there is an input over here. Okay, it's going to do that only if there is an input. So for that, we need to do if question, basically, which means if question is true, then we are going to create a variable called docs. Inside of here, we are going to do doc search dot get relevant documents method. Uh, get relevant documents related to the user question. Right, a question is existing. Once we have these relevant documents, we store them within the docs variable, and we are then going to load QA chain, provide that these docs, right, and these documents, and let me just call this read chain, right, in our case. And then we this read chain, we are going to run this. So read chain dot run, and we're going to provide the parameters input documents equals docs, and question is equal to the question that the user asked, and we are going to whatever response this chain gives us, we are going to store that as answer, right? And finally, this answer is what we want to return from this function, so we are going to do return answer, right? So to give you an overview of this, once again, we have this computational process. This function takes in the uh, PDFs, right? And then it iterates over those PDFs. Doesn't matter if they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a for loop that iterates, goes through all of those PDFs and extracts the text from them, and creates one big file that has the text of all of those PDFs, right? And then we are creating chunks of that text because we want to feed that to OpenAI, and OpenAI does not take large enough documents regarding a certain more than a certain token limit. So then we are once we have the chunks, we are using OpenAI embeddings to create embeddings of those chunks, and then we are storing them inside of a vector database, and then we are using a method to get relevant answer to a certain request or question from that vector database, and the answer that it returns, we are returning that answer from we are using the function return method to return that answer, so that way we can fetch that and bring that into the front end, right? And now what we can do is we can go back to our front end, and we can do import no, actually from back end import computational process. Okay, so now we have this function inside of our front end as well. And in our front end, we already have the user uh, providing question. Now against that question, we can get the answer from the backend using this process and display that on our front end. Now to give you an example, let me actually uh, write computational process, and as input parameters, remember we had API key, secondly we had PDFs, and lastly we had question. right? API key inside of our front end is what user is entering over here, right? And we're storing that as API underscore key. So I'm going to put that right here. API underscore key. PDFs is we are storing them over here. The PDFs that the user is uploading, we are storing that here inside of PDFs. So I'm going to put that PDFs equals PDFs. And question, well, the user is asking question over here, right? And we are storing that inside the question variable. So the question is question as well, right? Now if we call this function and let's store the answer something as answer, like inside of a variable, and if we type in the answer st dot text to display the answer, uh, we this should now work perfectly fine. So if I come back over here, if I upload some files, let me first of all refresh this. So it's showing a validation error for OpenAI root did not find API. To avoid this error, uh, we should run this function only when the OpenAI key is provided, right? Otherwise, it's calling this function even when there is no API key, and it's not we haven't entered the API key over here. It's not able to find the API key, and it's showing this error. So to avoid that, we can what we can do is we can say if PDFs and API key is not none, right? This will ensure that this function only runs when there are PDF files uploaded and there is an API key. So let me put this in proper format over here, the necessary indentation, and also we also want to make sure that this only runs when the user enters a question and not just when he enters in a API key and browse adds files, the function runs. We only want this function to run when this is true, as well as he has some question. So we can add if question as well, right? And then we are going to run this. It's showing an error over here. Answer is a string. Let me actually refresh it over here. Oh, it's actually saying we need indentation after this, simply like this. Okay, so if I reload this, it's working fine. Okay, so you can see that this time we did not have an error. It was quite an annoying error to get over, but we just needed to add the necessary if statements to ensure that the function only runs once the necessary information is provided, right? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to add my API key over here, and then I'll show you this app running. Okay, so I have added my API key over here, and let me actually upload two files and see if we are able to get a response. What is linear regression? Which it should be able to find the information from within this PDF file, math for machine learning. Right, it's taking some time to load because all right, we have an error. Let's see. User computational process. All right, so we have the error inside of computational process and read chain. Load QA chain. Oh, actually, if I go to my backend over here. All right, docs is already here. Load QA chain. Let's see. Instead of the docs over here, we need to provide the LLM, right? Yes, this should fix this because we did let me actually show this to you as well. So if I put docs over here, we actually did define our large language model over here, but we never used it, and we need to initialize it over here as one of its parameters. LLM equals LLM, uh, and then docs we are providing that over here, and question. Okay, and read chain should have the large language model. So yeah, that's what this error was about. Let me actually refresh this, paste my API key once again, and upload both these files once again. And let me ask the question once again: what is linear regression? And hopefully this works this time around. Again, it's going to take some time because all right, there we go. So linear regression is a method of finding a linear function of the input variables that best fits the given training data. All right, so we have successfully created our application, and that was it. I am also going to create a public repository on GitHub, and I'll share the link to that in the video description. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.